Good day, Bermuda and members of the media. I was delighted yesterday to unveil Robin Tucker and Marcus Jones as One Bermuda Alliance election candidates. Today, there are more new faces, more great candidates to add to the new team I have assembled who you will see over the coming days. Catherine Kempe is a health professional and an OBA deputy chair and will be representing Constituency 14. Jerriann Richardson is a successful businessman, a former police officer, journalist, and member of the Bermuda Royal Regiment. He will be representing in Constituency 23. Let me say this. Patricia Gordon-Pamplin, whom we lovingly refer to as Pat, has served Bermuda well for many, many years. She has been a minister, shadow minister, opposition leader, and we can't say enough about her continued commitment to the cause of creating a better Bermuda. And so to her, I give her all the accolades, all the support, and thank yous for representing the One Bermuda Alliance in Constituency 23. You have now seen four, and are seeing four new and outstanding OBA candidates. I must say that we are the right choice. Throughout COVID, the Premier listened to experts. He listened to health professionals in Bermuda and overseas. He listened to us as well. I talk to him on a regular basis. Ben Smith sat on the Emergency Measures Organization, and Pat Gordon-Pamplin sat on the Economic Advisory Committee. As a party, we were involved in many discussions with the Premier's team via video conferencing. Yet, when it comes to the economy, however, the Premier is unable to listen and to take advice. The extensive recommendations in the Bermuda First Report, which he commissioned, appear to have been ignored. The Financial Policy Council, which is chaired by the Premier's Finance Minister, said this, that an economic recovery plan should be put in place as a matter of urgency. We heard that, but did the Premier? The Premier put out a call to Bermudians to help him with ideas. Has he listened to any of those ideas? Bermuda, we are listening. We will soon unveil our social and economic plan. We know how to instill confidence in the economy. We know how to instill hope, and we know how to create jobs for Bermudians. Bermuda, we will do better. Now, I just want to, for a moment, speak to two phone calls that I received this morning. One was a phone call concerning, are the docks open? If there's any urgency that our Premier should be having, it's to resolve these issues because people are hurting. Under the COVID conditions, business is suffering, which means people are suffering. These issues need to be resolved as a matter of urgency. Yet our docks at this present time are still closed. The second call I received this morning was a student who was away, and they were irate and upset that they were not able to fly to Bermuda throughout the recommended time in order to vote. Her exact words were, I am a generational Bermudian who wants to vote, but because I'll be quarantined, I am being denied my constitutional right to be able to vote. Now, it pains me to listen to the Premier again lie in front of the media and to the public of Bermuda and say, oh, well, the opposition, was in confidential meetings and I'm not going to say do what he did and go out there. I've not been in any confidential meetings at all. There's been one meeting that we had with the Parliamentary Register just to discuss the details of how we deal with advanced polling. And for the Premier to get up in front of you just an hour ago and to lie to you, the public, to say I'm giving out confidential information, continues to mislead you like this, he needs to be held accountable. And that track record is there. over and over and over again. And I, as the leader of the opposition, am not going to put up with it. And every time he does it, I'm going to call him out on it. This is ridiculous. And again, as I said to you yesterday when we rolled out, it's all magic. It's all tricks. If he was really concerned about the plight of Bermuda, he would get on with the job at hand. Get on with the job at hand. I'm not concerned about the Premier's opinion of me. What I'm concerned about is what is he doing for this country as the Premier. The police are still reeling. Fire, prisons. Now we got the docks confusion. Where is this government in resolving these issues? So I'm not going to stand by and allow the Premier to mislead you, Bermuda. More questions need to be asked about a whole lot of things that our Premier has been doing. And I'm hoping that you, the media, ask those questions, because Bermuda is in trouble. He's told you that. And the coming months are going to be worse. And we have been steadfastly, since 2017, after the election was called, asked for an economic plan. Our people are in trouble. Businesses that you work for are failing and going out of business. Now, we either get to the hand and the issues of the day and start dealing with us, but the Premier is unwilling to. And he's riding on the fact that you're going to vote him back in because he listened to health officials. And the airlines did something that he didn't do, and that was shut Bermuda down. Now, I commend him for the daily reports that they put out. That should have been done. But any government would have done that for you. What I'm concerned is this Premier has not figured out how to listen. And that's why we're in the state that we are in. And that's why I'm excited as I sit here with the two candidates that we do have, Catherine Kempe and this Jerriann Richardson, dynamic Bermudians, looking forward to serve you. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring the mic over to Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cannonier, for those kind words and giving me the opportunity to represent the people of Constituency 14, Devonshire Northwest. Good day, Bermuda, and good day, members of the media. I'm running for the House of Assembly for Constituency 14 to work on increasing women's presence in politics. As I said in my recent article, the COVID-19 health crisis has shown that 19 of the top 20 countries that have done the best have been led by women. It is time for women to have a larger presence in the running of our government. We will do better. Many will say that the Premier did well throughout the pandemic. However, it was the professional and inspiring women behind him that allowed our country to do as well as it did. Dr. Cheryl Peak-Ball, recently retired Chief Medical Officer. Dr. Fiona Ross, head of the Bermuda Medical Council, and inspirational Dr. Karika Weldon. They were instrumental in putting in place the policies and procedures that helped protect us. It is a testament to the strength of our female leadership that Bermuda did as well as it has. But while I highlight these three superwomen, I'm not forgetting about the everyday woman. During the lockdown, it was those women who suddenly had to make sure that our children were continuing their schooling from home. They cooked, they did their day job, they multitasked while experiencing the same stress of the pandemic and crisis for jobs in Bermuda. Maybe we should be referring to them as Wonder Women. I am a mother of 2 schoolboys, and I faced the sudden shift of working from home while ensuring that my children were doing their schoolwork. It was a steep learning curve that I and other women had to master quickly, but we rose to the challenge. We are natural doers, leaders, organizers, multitaskers. But we can no longer sit on the sidelines and allow some men of the House of Assembly to make public derogatory comments about women while political leaders are condoning their misogynistic behavior, thus approving the culture of toxic masculinity within our government. We cannot expect the men that make these comments to be able to truly fight for us and believe in our rights. Women represent 52% of the population of Bermuda, but we do not enjoy anywhere near that same level of representation in the House. And we need to continue the struggle to make sure that we're strongly represented in our communities, our societies, and our government, because we will do better. Thank you, Mr. Cannonier.
Okay. This is
Good day, Bermuda, party colleagues, and members of the media. My name is Jerriann Richardson, and I'm running for Constituency 23, Paget West. Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to thank my colleague and predecessor, Patricia Gordon-Pamplin. Having spent 22 years serving the communities of Paget West and Bermuda as a whole, I've been humbled by her kind words and support. I have had incredible privileges that the vast majority of Bermuda will never know. As a police officer, I was privileged to work alongside members of various communities around the island in resolving problems that seriously impacted their lives, their safety, and their own pursuits. I was privileged to meet and work with truly selfless police officers who are still out there on the front line of the global pandemic. I was privileged to serve in the Royal Bermuda Regiment and represent Bermuda in overseas training exercises. I was privileged to assist small children as a medic in Jamaica, and I was privileged to spend my early adult years as a reporter, observing court cases, parliament, and getting an education in civil society second to none. I got to participate in people's greatest joys in that role as a reporter, and then record for all posterity the legacy they left after they passed away. I was trusted enough to be of service then, and here again I'm asking for your trust. We face a calamitous future, full of uncertainty and no doubt suffering. We didn't get here quickly or suddenly, but rather over time, almost without notice. Our values of service and sharing have been replaced with get while the getting is good. Our prudence, our discernment, our humility, replaced with raucous self-congratulations. I believe this election is not about the issues that we can see and feel and discuss. It's about the degeneration that led to them happening in the first place. I believe that there is a better Bermuda over the horizon, a Bermuda where opposing views are shared and respected and maybe even admired, a Bermuda where education is aligned to your dreams, whether it be a career or a lifestyle, a Bermuda where you are valued not because of the color of your skin or which family you're from, but because of the care and compassion you pour into those around you, a Bermuda where the economy functions for the good of all and the benefits protect the most vulnerable, not enrich the few. A Bermuda where families sit around dinner tables, where children play cricket in the streets and can walk home from school without fret. Where our leaders lead humbly, embarrassed by their accomplishments, and always subservient to the necessities of the community they serve. Where money is valued not for what it can get me, but for the security it provides. And where our security is enshrined in our laws, not in our names. Where police aren't cops, but constables. Where our teachers sit at the very top of our society, respected, dignified, and honored for their role as trustees of our hopes and builders of our future. Where disagreement doesn't mean disdain, where anger is temporary and forgiveness is perpetual, where we laugh a lot out loud. Over our history, we've been everything from slaves and sailors to farmers and fishermen, to underwriters and attorneys. In this time of uncertainty, we don't know what will be next. Which part of our economy will boom, or maybe it will be something that isn't here yet. But no matter what we do for a living, we will navigate it well if we arrest the regression of our civil standards and our discourse. We have to hold on to character. We have to hold on to virtues. Only that way can we get back to when we used to leave our doors unlocked. I look forward to speaking individually and personally with every voter in Constituency 23. Thank you.
okay, guys.
Any questions?
sorry. The position you want to hold.
Been there, done that.
You talked about what you say is a lack of economic plan for recovery from the PLP. What would be the OBA's plan for next year in the short term?
As I said in my statement, we'll be rolling out our economic plan. And yesterday, when we did the interview with you while you were here, we spoke to some basic things that need to be done. And that basic thing right now is we need to win the trust of investment back into this island. There are not enough people to circulate enough money to keep government going and to keep everyone feeding their families. We need more people here. We need more investment here. And what we need to do is, while we do that, we need to protect every single Bermudian, especially the vulnerable, right now. It can be done. We did it in 2012. We won the election, and we'll continue to go back to that recipe because we know it created jobs and opportunities for Bermudians.
With the candidate rollouts today, you've had at least 4 MPs, current MPs, step down. What would you say to somebody who might be concerned that you're losing a lot of senior leadership and replacing it with younger people who haven't been?
Yeah, great question.
tested?
Great question. One of the challenges when I got involved in politics and came in officially in 2011, there was a great generational gap. I walked into the room and I'm looking around, and folk had been involved in politics for 20-something years. There weren't very many, if any at all, young people, and I say young in their 30s or 40s, that were involved in the political arena. And I think a large part of that has to do with some of the challenges with how personal it can get, politics. It is something that we have seen over the last almost 2 decades now, where politics has moved to this arena of being very personal. I have seen where women, if you take a look in 2012 when we won the election, we as the OBA had more women as MPs than any other government has had. We've moved away from that already, and we need to get women back involved. We need more representation. And if you take a look at the history books, you'll see that the day after the election was called, it was I who said, let's bring this thing together, and invited a member of PLP to come into our cabinet so that we had true representation of Bermuda making the decisions for Bermuda. So as we go forward, no doubt you're going to see new faces. That is a brilliant and good thing for Bermuda. We must keep current. And the way you're going to keep current is by getting new and dynamic people into the room, bringing ideas and concepts that take us into the future. That's important. And those senior people who are moving on, some of them, believe me, they're still in the room.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, Jasmine.
The Premier recently indicated at a press conference that he's been assured by the registrar that voting possibilities are safe and mail-in voting wouldn't be a consideration for those who have to quarantine. Do you take issue with that?
Yeah, I do take issue with it. We're still trying to resolve and fix the challenge of the health risk. If you call the parliamentary register now, she is still going through how to make this thing safe. We're, less than 30 days now away from an election, and we're still trying to resolve these issues? This is the challenge with calling a snap election in the middle of a pandemic. We got people who are concerned. And even for those during the advance polling or during the time for the actual election day, if we have to go into their homes, so many precautions are going to have to be made. This is costing the taxpayer. And this is coming from a premier who called an election based on the false premise that he's worried about cost because of by-elections. And he's creating massive cost because of the precautions that are going to have to be taken because of a pandemic. With the 25-11 disparity within government, he could have simply said, we're having this election in 60 days, worked out the challenges, but everyone was working overtime right now. Everyone is tired, and people are at risk. We already see now where candidates are going out, and they are at risk. And so, God forbid that I'll be transparent. I won't say who the candidate is yet, but one of our candidates went to a function, and there was someone there who got the notice that they were COVID positive. Now, that candidate has to be quarantined and can't go out. This is the ill thinking. This is a premier who says he's being innovative. This is not innovation at all. We need to be careful. Our health is at risk. We are a very small community, and that has to be taken into consideration. And to call an election, fine. We have no problem with that. He made the mistake of thinking we weren't ready. That's his mistake. That's on the premier. But the health risk is paramount, and I'm concerned about that.
Now, the likes of Mr. Trevor Munez and Ms. Patricia Gordon-Pamplin, they've obviously had a very long career in politics.
Yes.
However, Mrs. Sylvan Richards, who showed lots of promise,
Yes.
was quite young and
Yes,
decided
yes.
not to run. Did
Yes.
he give you an explanation as to why he wouldn't be running?
Absolutely, and I encourage you to contact him as well. What I will say to this is that it is for personal reasons, and he's got these very valid personal reasons as to why. It has nothing to do with his politics and whether he believes in the OBA or not. But it's important that he take care of his family, and I have spoken to him on a number of occasions, and it's important that he take care of his family. Family comes first, and that's important.
Just got a few ones quickly.
Sure.
Thanks for having us. I guess, Mr. Kennedy, I'll start on you. You've been hammering the premier on his plans for the economy, and he said just now, I believe, that there's advice that he's getting from Bermuda First, fiscal
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
What specifically is he reluctant to address? Are there a couple of things you can tell us that you think he's just flat out ignoring or doesn't want to take from these bodies that are there to advise him?
Yeah, he has ignored the fact that Bermuda needs more people circulating money within this economy. Quite frankly, if you go back to the time where we were able to have 2 and 3 jobs and people were making a great salary, we had at least 8 to 10,000 more people circulating money within the economy. And it is important for all of us in Bermuda to understand that the only capital that we have is intellectual capital. We don't have the resources of gold or silver and the likes that we can rely on to help keep us afloat. And so people are important. Bermuda has become a wonder of the world because it brought in people from all around the world. That's how we've become the wonder of the world. We are a mixed bunch of people who have come together with an intellectual capital I'd put up against many other places with our experience. And we've led in many industries. Until we get more people back into the island, and let me preface this, mistakenly people try to say, oh, well, Canada just wants to bring in people to, mow lawns and the likes. No, that's not what I'm talking about at all. There are some industries that we know Bermudians won't do. We saw that when it was a PLP government, when they put a moratorium on landscaping, and that failed because Bermudians wouldn't take on that job. So what we need to do is ensure that whether it's labor or whether it's IB business or the likes, we are getting more people to contribute to the quality of living for Bermudians without sacrificing Bermudians. And he has ignored that, only to now say, oh, well, we're going to open up the borders for people to come here just for a year to work. So he's acknowledging finally now that we need to do this, which I find very hypocritical because he recognizes we need more people here. And by the way, as I said yesterday, that policy, that legislation was put in place by the OBA for people to be able to come here for a year to work remotely. And so I recommend it. And so the premier has got to get on with opportunities. To give you one opportunity, we should be banging down the doors of Hong Kong right now with the challenges that they are having, to getting many of those investors looking at Bermuda and the prospect of Bermuda. So I won't repeat myself. As I mentioned yesterday, very much the same thing. That's where the premier is failing. He needs to get trust back in Bermuda. And race baiting and playing these silly magicianal tricks that I see going on is not going to win confidence in Bermuda.
Right, I won't preempt it because you've said a plan is coming. So there's going to be a plan, because obviously we were able to bring all these people in at a great time. Right now, we don't know what kind of time, but it looks quite tough. There's going to be an alternative plan coming from yourselves fairly soon?
Absolutely. Listen, I think we proved very well that we can get investment into the island. That's why you saw St. Regis. That's why you saw the airport. That's why you saw Morgan's Point, the greatest sporting event in the world. $20 million put into the economy, a sporting event. Now, some people got caught up into the racial issues of it's a sporting event, and black people have benefited from that sporting event and are now experienced sailors and will go on onto the world stage representing Bermuda because that thing came here. And so we need to do more of these kinds of things. We showed the way. Go out there and get some sporting events. Bring them here. People love Bermuda. Mostly, they love Bermudians, us. Let us sell Bermuda.
Right on. Just a couple questions for your candidates, if possible. Wait.
Question for Mr. Candidate. The Premier just unveiled the candidate that's running in your constituency. Do you have any comments to make based on his statements today?
Yeah, no, I think I already made those in my opening statements, his opinion. It doesn't matter to me, his opinion of me. I'm more concerned about his lack of being able to take care of Bermudians. That's my greatest concern. I welcome the young lady that's getting involved. She's from the constituency, lives in that constituency. This is a good thing for democracy, guys. It's a good thing for democracy. The One Bermuda Alliance will never mislead you. We want to see strong candidates. It makes us all better. But the stuff that I see coming from Premier Burt is not where he's taking the island. A stronger democracy at a 25-11 lead. Stronger democracy is not calling an election during the middle of a pandemic. That's not leadership, guys. That's mobilizing your troops for your own personal power trip. I said it, and I'll continue to say it. And Bermudians need to see that reality. We need to think about us, people, first, not power. You already have it. Let's fix the issues of the island. 30-day, 60-day election would have been easy. I'm not saying he didn't have to call it when he called it. Fine, but make it a 60-day. At least resolve some of your issues. Instead, what we have is more issues and more cost. Against the backdrop where the Premier is saying, we're trying to cut costs, and he does a commercial. I can guarantee you, I know what those commercials cost. Well over $20,000 for a commercial that he put out to show us that he can tie his shoes. And that's looking at cost. Let's get real here, guys. So I'm going to keep it real. Catherine wants to answer a question.
Well, I have one, I know. Ms. Kemp, you
Yes.
have a background in
Yes.
health.
I do. I am a registered nurse.
Yes. So win the election, can you, speak to a further role in healthcare? We're looking at healthcare reform. Health is a big topic at the moment. Can you speak to that side of things?
Health is an extremely big topic right now for us, and the OBA has always been very clear that we believe in universal health care coverage for everybody, but that doesn't necessarily need to be one that is paid for, financed, and mandated by our current government. The regulations and the proposal that's being put forth under the PLP is actually not fixing the issue of those who don't have insurance. So our plan will be looking at how do we fix those that don't have insurance and make it sure that's fair, that it's equitable, and that is being managed appropriately by people who know what they're doing.
Gotcha. I guess for yourself, Mr. Richardson.
I decided
Oh, wait.
Yeah, well, Catherine's
Oh.
supposed to be the questions, that would be able to slide the mic back and forth.
Okay.
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 This is an issue with the.
That's okay.
Ms. Kemp?
Yeah.
How would you assess what the government did during the COVID crisis?
They listened to Dr. Cheryl Peakball, Dr. Ross, and Dr. Weldon brilliantly, and they followed the blueprint that a lot of other countries that have shown success with it. But right now, especially as a mother, they stopped public school a week early in June, remember, so that way they could get ready for the school year. They've pushed back the reopening of public schools already, and now we're losing further schooling days for our children because public schools are being used for polling stations. So we're making it unfair. All of this falls normally onto the mothers. Making sure, what do we do with our children during the school time period? And all of this is further making it harder for us to make sure that we are able to keep a roof over our heads. So although, yeah, they've done great on the health side and communicating, there's so much uncertainty from the world of education right now.
Would the OBA be opening schools?
The OBA would be looking at what the health experts are doing, but there would have been more modeling and trialing that was done. And today on the radio, Minister Robin spoke about how they've been taking roles and looking at what Warwick Academy has done. Well, they've managed to success and reopen their school yesterday because they did trialing and modeling, and they put sound practices in place, and that it was really well communicated. People knew.
You talked about toxic masculinity,
Yes.
and your opponent, if it's the current MP, had
Mhm.
an infamous comment while in the UK about titty milk.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel yourself running up against him and some of the previous comments that he's made?
Those comments were absolutely uncalled for, but what was even more uncalled for was that they were condoned by the Premier.
Hi, Ms. Kemp.
Hi.
How do you intend to appeal to the average woman in your constituency, and what do you see as, or anticipate some of the issues that they bring to you?
Well, I've already been out speaking to some of the constituents, and some of the issues that are being raised is about how are we getting our children back to school, but also about the uncertainty of jobs at this point as well for them. I am a mother of 2 small boys. It's a real struggle some days to figure out how we're going to manage and get things done as women. So I think I do appeal, and I relate quite nicely to most average women. Yeah.
What do you think is preventing women from entering the political arena?
Part of it is that we don't follow the same roadmap. It seems as though no matter how well we're doing in the boardrooms and elevating our careers, as soon as our workday is done, it seems like we're still falling back into those traditional gender roles. When our children finish school at 3:00, what do we do with those children? It's normally on the women who are cutting their careers short, who are trying to figure out how to manage all of this. So the time that we would normally want to get involved with our community isn't being spent because we are dealing with our families at the time.
What do you see as a solution politically?
Politically, there's great ways to do that by extending the school day, so that way as mothers we don't need to worry about our children after school. That is like a homework club or some sort of organized activity that could actually be encouraging and fostering that, so that way we don't really need to worry. We know where our children are, we know that they're learning, we know that they're safe, but we also know that we can still concentrate on our jobs for that time period. And I think that would be one major way of improving things for us. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Done?
But yeah, I was gonna ask you, Mr. Richardson, I guess open-endedly, why the OBA at this time?
Why the OBA at this time? That's a long answer, and then so you'll have to bear with me on this one. I was reluctant to enter politics because, to be fair, after I had served in the regiment and I had the fortune of going to an overseas exercise with the British forces, and I learned an incredible amount there. And then coming home and joining the police service, and then working in the community beat office, which is the successor to the parish constables. And then working, as I said, in and amongst those communities, and really learning a lot about them and participating them in, again, their joys and their heartaches. I left the police, and I wanted to buy a house, and I suppose settle down would be the phrase. I wanted to get the yard and to have a dog and just do all those things. I didn't want to work cut match anymore, and and I thought, okay, well, that's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go do these things, and then you just watch the slip of the country. You watch the slide of the country. You watch the tenor, the tone, the way people are getting treated, the crime, social institutions, walls falling down, lack of accountability, slow service in areas where we pay taxes for, if you can get served at all a lot of times. Everything just seemed to be getting worse and worse. And it didn't seem like anyone was paying attention to it getting worse. So when I had the occasion to speak to someone who come by the house during canvassing, Scott Pierman, I sat him down at the table and said, "What's the plan?" You know, I don't think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell that things aren't getting better. So I said, "Well, how are we going to get it? What are we going to do about that?" And he had some very good ideas, and I said, "Sure, thanks." And then he turned around and said, "Have you ever thought about getting involved in politics?" And I said, "No, thank you. Please leave the house." But I'll give it to him. He kept calling and kept asking me questions, and it dawned on me that during these conversations, you know, we all can't pick the day that we are called. We can't pick the day that is most important. We can only answer the call. And I look at the World War II generation, my grandparents' generation. I look at people who had to stand a tiptoe when their day was named, and whether it was through rationing, whether it was through sending their children away, whether it was mothers and fathers sending their sons and daughters into harm's way. That was the best part of us as people, was sacrificing the things we have today to ensure that there will be a tomorrow, and not just a tomorrow, but a better one. And it dawned on me that when this day is named, I could not look at my daughters and tell them that I did not stand a tiptoe on that day. So that's why I joined.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
If elected and you're fairly safe seat, what ministry or what areas would you like to work in and why?
I've been fortunate enough to work on a number of projects over my career, whether in the police I got to work in the back office of the intelligence function, first in the front and then the back, working on systems, and then subsequent to that I've worked on a number of projects. My company, we work on projects fixing problems. I like to dissect problems. I enjoy the technical aspects. I enjoy finding perspectives. I enjoy outlining and moving the pieces around, looking for causal factors, weighting them. I enjoy moving these things together. And it's actually, I give it to most people, it's incredibly dull work for most people. But I really, really enjoy it. And I would want to get stuck in, as it were, into something like that. And I get the impression that would be the cabinet office function, where there's management services, auditor general, anyone who's going to get into the behind the scenes work and figure out why, for example, a government department is using Lotus Notes, or some other unsupported system. Why is it that people are getting rewarded inconsistently with their performance? What is the incentive? What is the incentives for a government department? For example, if we're going to spend $7 million on this department and they have key performance indicators, measured outcomes that are 1, 2, and 3, why did they hit 1? And that's not to say it's just people. A lot of times what you're looking at is institutions, right, and processes. And so that's the thing I want to get stuck into, because I think that a lot can be done, a lot of good can be done with the things that we already have. And that's what I'd be interested in. Yeah.
From your time in the regiment and police service, can you just mention one thing that you think they do well, and one thing that you think can be improved?
Sure. Let's start with the bad, and then we go to the good. So starting with the police service, the one thing the police service does didn't do particularly well was using the information that they had, or the information that was moving around the community, capturing it, crystallizing it, and using it to deploy resources in a proactive way. That was the past. That has changed over time, and I haven't been in the police service for some time now. I'd say 7 years or so. It's longer than that, now I think about it. a good example of technology is that at the time the radios wouldn't communicate in certain geographic areas or would be intermittent in those areas. That meant that as a constable would be deployed into that area, they would not have the full support of the entire police service. They'd be a lot more on their own, right? And obviously that speaks to officer safety, but that does speak to the kind of information they can get access to with which to make decisions to make people's lives better in that circumstance. So that was something that wasn't, that needed improvement. And the information I've been receiving thus far is that that has been improving, so much so that they've got new radio equipment, officer safety has been stepped up, and yeah, they seem to be moving in the right direction. And the thing that the police do well is the thing that most people don't give them credit for, which is that they care. There is a number of senior constables, senior sergeants, even young constables and sergeants who are on a daily basis putting themselves in harm's way in a very real way for people in Bermuda. They genuinely are going to houses, they genuinely care if people are getting hurt. They go into neighborhoods that maybe where they're not welcomed, and they get stuck into those communities and they ask questions. Now that doesn't mean to say that they're perfect, by no stretch of the imagination. What I mean to say is that they're putting in effort. And a lot of times that's a hard thing to see when you only get that one touch point with a police constable. With the regiment, I would say that the thing, it would have to do with equipment again, to be fair. The regiment for a long time was not only underfunded but undermanned, and it did not have the best kind of equipment to do the jobs that it was allocated. And to be fair, even the jobs that were allocated to it were ill-fitting a lot of times. So what you wind up with in the regiment is you could wind up with an ineffective either unit, subunit, or group of people that couldn't accomplish a national goal in the manner that we would want it to be accomplished. So that changed, again, over time quite radically as we got exposure to more and more overseas professionals, more practiced in the craft of soldiering, who have had experience deploying into combat zones and into high impact scenarios. We got better relationships with our sister units in the professional services, that being the Royal Navy, the British Army, and that means that we got that exposure. In fact, the trip that I got to go on was one of the first in a series of trips where private soldiers who are typically not going to be flying overseas and experiencing that quality of training were getting attached to British forces, and we got to see what it looks like to undertake soldiering as a full-time profession, and as what it's like to put your life on the line in a combat scenario, which may not dovetail neatly to our narrative in Bermuda, but what it does is that means that when we do enter high-risk scenarios in Bermuda, such as hurricanes, we're seeing a higher degree of professionalism and tenacity in those scenarios. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Ms. Richardson.
Morning.
What would you say to convince swing voters or those who traditionally vote for the PLP?
All of them?
In terms of in your constituency?
I'll parse it down to the ones I can work with. I mean, what would I say to convince them? Well, to convince them of what is the first thing, because there's a number of hard-held beliefs in Bermuda that are not necessarily things I would want to dislodge. There is value in the conclusions they've reached in their own lives and their observations, right? They're not dead wrong. Because you support the PLP, I don't think you're wrong. Certainly not in totality. You know, you're a fully fledged adult with your own family and career. I'm not going to discount you because we have a disagreement on a couple items. What I would do then is I would speak to the issue at hand. What is it specifically that we're talking about that you have a problem with? Because that I can deal with. I can pick that apart. I can work with that, and I can work with you. What I can't do is be your enemy. That I'm not going to do.
Sure. And just lastly, given your varied career background in various areas, what is the common thread or lesson that you hope to bring into politics?
Character. It always ends in character. It starts with character, it ends in character. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that I'm perfect, and it certainly doesn't mean that any one of us is perfect, anyone in this room or anyone listening. What it means to say is that when things get hard, we double down. We square our shoulders, we put our chins up, and we go forward. We go through the difficulty to get to the victory. We don't back down. We don't backbite. We don't fight each other. The thing that we have to do is a great thing. All the small things of life, all the things that people consider the small things, they are great things, and they're noble things. Raising children, getting that right. People talk about getting to work on time. We have so much in front of us to do between now and the day we leave this planet that we can't pull back. We can't hide from the challenges that are in front of us. And Bermuda has got some serious challenges coming up. Things that are going to redefine how we see each other, how we interact with each other. When our economy takes its inevitable step south, it's not so much what we do for our professions. That's not the part that I think is the hardest part. The hardest part is what we do with each other. Because we're about to enter a high pressure scenario, and it's going to be way easier to find enemies than it will be to find solutions. And so to that end, that's why I say character, character, character. No lying, no cheating, always being honest. That's how I think we do it.
Thank you very much, guys. We've kept you here for quite a long time. One more. Picture?